Hello everyone, this is DeltaBrrr and welcome to my first YouTube video. Thank you for joining me, and I hope you're having a wonderful day. And today we'll be going over hex perks and Dead by Daylight. Now obviously this is my opinion, so if you do disagree, please leave a comment below. I would really like to see some opinions on this. I'm actually gonna delete the E tier because I don't find it useful. But I couldn't find a tier list with only the hex perks up to date. So I decided to just use a tier list of 6.0 with all the perks, but we're going to be ignoring the rest of the perks besides the hex perks. And I do want to take a look at these because, as you know, Ruin and Noed were recently nerfed. So I do want to kind of take a look and see where everything else stands roughly in the meta or how good they are, at least in my opinion. But getting on from that, moving on. So up first we have Bloodpaper. Now Bloodpaper I really don't think is a super strong perk. I think it is very niche, and I think it's a deserving of C tier, maybe a low B tier, but we will see how the tier list goes along. I think I like C tier for this perk because typically you're not going to be getting a lot of value from this perk with the new tiles in Macmillan or just good loops. Basically most maps with windows, you're not going to be getting a lot of value after getting a hit. Now, you can get a lot of value if you are playing on like Auto Haven, and there are basically only pallets sometimes in the middle. It can be very, very helpful to block a pallet save or to get a quick and easy down. Next is Hex Crowd Control. I actually think this perk is better than Bloodpaper because in the beginning of the game, forcing a God pallet like Shack or something like an RPD, the God Loop, if you're able to force that because they can't actually vault the window, it can be extremely strong. Either they can drop Shack pallet or typically can take a hit or down if you already have a hit on them. I think Hex Crowd Control is actually seriously underrated, and I think it is pretty good for the early game. It's a very strong early game perk, but I don't think it does really amazing late game just because you kind of want something else to help you with late game or you want more slowdown perks. But I think it's really good in the early game to try to force a lot of pallets early. Next is Devouring Hope. Now this is going to be a first high tier perk. Now what Devouring Hope does is at 3 stacks, it makes everyone in the trial exposed, and at 5 stacks, you're able to Mori everyone in the trial. If you are able to get these stacks, and obviously they're pretty easy to get these stacks because it's only 3 and 5 stacks, and there's a mini effect, I think, at 2 stacks. Basically just gives you 10% haste 10 seconds after you hook someone. It's there. It's a it's a bonus. But I think Devour is a perfect example of super high risk for being a Hex Totem, and it's a super high reward totem. If you're able to get value from this, it is an insane perk. If you're able to actually keep those 5 stacks, it is an S tier perk easily. But typically, in this game, Hex Totem spawns are pretty easy to find, and they're pretty memorizable. So it's pretty easy to just find the totems and cleanse them. Sometimes on some maps, like Dead Dog, it can actually be hard to find them because they can actually be in bushes. So sometimes you'll be able to see them, but you are able to hear Hex Totem, so it does make it a lot easier. Moving on from Devour Hope, we're gonna see Haunted Grounds. Now, Haunted Grounds, I think, is sort of a niche perk, but I think it's a good niche perk. I think when you do use it, you are typically gonna get value out of it, especially on someone like Nurse, who's able to ignore pallets and walls, and is going to basically get full value out of this perk. Or even someone like Spirit, who's able to just instantly catch up to you and down you. I think Haunted Grounds is very strong when used correctly, but if you are able to get looped for those 60 seconds, it obviously does literally nothing. I think it is a really good definition of what a hex perk, an average hex perk can be, where you can either get a lot of reward from a high risk perk or no reward from a high risk perk, basically by saying you cleanse my Hex Totem, I downed 3 of you, or you cleanse my Hex Totem, I didn't do anything because I got looped. That's basically what I think this totem says, and I like it because there's two haunted ground totems in the trial, kind of two personalities of it. I like that. Hex Lullaby is unfortunately going in F tier. Doesn't do much against experienced survivors. The best thing about Lullaby that I have found is the 6% extra regression on the perk. I like it. So if they do actually miss a skill check with someone like Doctor, you actually do get a lot of gen regress. But typically, they can just hit a skill check, or there are times where if you run Merciless with Doctor and Lullaby, it can be really, really hard to actually hit those skill checks and unnerving because they're small, they're bouncing, they're reverse, they're forward. It can sometimes actually be pretty hard to hit those skill checks. But overall, Huntress Lullaby typically doesn't do what you want it to do and is pretty early on cleansed, which is unfortunate. Nobody. A lot of people. I'm gonna talk about this a little real quick, but a lot of people think Nobody is a very toxic perk when it isn't. It is actually a very strong perk, which is why it's gonna be our first S tier. Don't ever use Amen Strike, which is why it's gonna be our first S tier. Hex perk. Now, obviously, it got the recent nerf of being able to be seen within 24 meters, I think, but 4 meters as stars, scaling up 30 seconds to 24 meters. It gives you the ability to instantly down everyone in the trial, no matter what health state they are. Everyone becomes exposed. Now, once they find the Hex Totem and they cleanse it, it's gone. But having that kind of like confirm or slow down to the game can be extremely, extremely strong. Whether you did really good in the game or you did really bad in the game, I think it is just a strong perk overall. Now, you don't always need it. It's not a necessity perk, but it is really, really nice to have whether they got all 4 gens done, or all 5 gens done, and you're looking for the last person, the last 2 people, and you're able to get the slug or get the down, you hook them, and you get the final person because they can't find your Hex Totem, and then you win the game off of that. I do not think it is a second chance perk by any means. I think it is just another example of high risk and very, very, very high reward. I think a baby could be tuned down just a little bit, maybe make the aura basically visible or like more when the end game spawns. So I think a good nerf to this perk would actually make it to be spawn at 7 meters aura and scaling up to roughly 30 meters or 32 meters to match a tear radius. Hex Petabindo. I think Hex Petabindo is an A tier perk. If you are able to just get 1 cleanse, that's really all you need for this perk, is to get 1 cleanse on the map, and you get 30% repair speed deficiency, basically. They repair gens at 30% the rate. It is an extremely good slowdown perk on basically most killers. So most killers could just use it and be fine. They're not going to really see much downside to it. Unless they go cleanse that totem and you have to go rekindle another one. But typically all you need is one and the rest are just a cherry on top to what you already have. So I think Pentimento is extremely, extremely strong for only needing 1 stack of it, and then being able to get more on top of that is just insanely good in my opinion. Moving on to Hex Plaything. I think Hex Plaything is a very niche perk, and I think it does have a lot of good applications. So I'm going to put this perk in B tier. I think Plaything is very rewarding for getting someone on a hook, and obviously it goes away really fast because they're able to find that totem pretty early on. It obviously shows its aura within 24 meters for the first 90 seconds of being unhooked. And it makes you oblivious that entire time. So it is very punishing for people who do not care about it. So it is high risk, high reward because they can't just go cleanse it after they get the unhook, or they could leave it and you will get a ton of value from it. Especially playing someone like Oni or even some small stealth killers. I really love it on Pig because it lets me just walk around without actually having to crouch. But people like Oni can also use it really well by being able to demon dash and they will not know you're coming. Hex Retribution. I think Hex Retribution is very underrated. I don't think it is particularly great, but I think it is slightly underrated, and I am going to put it above Hex Bloodpaper. It does give you a lot of info for those 50. That's 15 seconds of aura reveal on absolutely everyone. Whether you can't find someone at the beginning of the game or you're in a chase and it's really good wall hacks. And then if you down them, you hook them, you already know where everyone else is because you already seen them. So now you can go pressure their gens or pressure whatever they're doing. And then come back, whether they just get the unhook, you come back, you see the person unhook them, you down them, or you go and pressure the gens or whatever else they're doing, and down them there. It's just a really good aura beating perk. Plus, it makes them oblivious for 60 seconds, I'm pretty sure, to whoever interacts with it. Or if they were to cleanse a Dual Totem, that also makes them oblivious. Ruin. Now, Ruin was nerfed in this latest patch to 100% regression speed. And I think this is the most controversial hex perk out there because I think a lot of people still think it's really good, and I think a lot of people think it's really bad. In my opinion, I think this perk is the top of C tier. I don't think this perk is going to see much play at all anymore because there are perks like Eruption in the game, or like Surge or Jolt, whatever you want to call it. There's also Deadlock. Even Deadman Switch that just got nerfed is still pretty decent. Pop is still pretty good, and Call of Brine is also in the game. A ton of slowdown perks that are just quite literally better than Ruin. Pain Res, obviously Thanat is not as good anymore. Definitely would recommend not running that perk. But I think Ruin can still be sometimes used on killers that are very easily able to pressure gens if they have high mobility, being able to pressure a lot of people at one time. Having Ruin go on those all at once without having to stop and kick the gen can be still really, really nice. But if you're not super high mobility and not able to pressure a ton of gens at once, I don't think this perk should really be used. Hex the Third Seal. I don't think this perk is too awful. I've actually went against it a few times, and having the blindness status effect in solo queue games can be sometimes a little hard because I like to run things like Windows of Opportunity or just like niche perks that give me some little bit of aura reveal. Sometimes they're not good perks like Left Behind. There are times where I fuck around with Left Behind, and sometimes I can't even find the hatch because we never found the Third Seal. But I typically will run something like Windows of Opportunity, and that does block it. And also when you see someone get hooked, you will have to pay attention really close to where they are hooked, or else you want people to see them on the hook. And I think the strongness or the strength of this is just having an infinite blindness status effect until they actually cleanse it. So I think it's okay. I think it is very deserving of a very, very, very low B tier. I think if you were to use this over some of these perks in the C or F tier, you would get a lot more value out of it. Now, seeing that, I'm actually going to move Crowd Control up to here because I think Crowd Control is just a better perk than Third Seal. I think it just gives you a lot more pressure overall. Thrill of the Hunt. I'm actually going to put this in F tier, and I'm going to put it above Huntress Lullaby. If you want to slow down Hex perk, just run Undying, basically. If you're trying to farm blood points, I could see you using it, but typically it just gets cleansed in the first few 30 seconds of the game because that's just how Hex perks are. Now Undying, the last Hex perk, obviously this is going into S tier. It gives your Hex Totems another life, which is just insane. A Devourer that has 2 lives, or, the Wed that has 2 lives, or Haunted Ground that has 2 lives, 120 seconds of exposed total, or Crowd Control with 2 lives. It's just insane. Undying is just an insane perk, and is really good when paired with other things. Now, that being said, alone it is awful. You get no value from it. It still does have the aura reading of within 6 meters of any totem. Their aura will be revealed, so sometimes you actually can get value from it alone. But typically, you're only ever actually going to want to pair it with other Hex Totems. Give them another life, so that can be really nice. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please tell me your thoughts on this video in the comments below. This is my first YouTube video in a while, and I really hope you guys enjoyed the content. If you liked the video, please give it a like. Don't forget to subscribe if you liked the video too, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.